Bless up, God family. So many beautiful revelations coming through. This is day 17 of my juice fast, and I'm feeling really brilliant. A lot of release coming from the physical in terms of just impurities being removed from my body that, hey, sometimes I realize I didn't even have. Right now I'm making some, I guess you could call it fertilizer out of coconut husk. But yeah, but also the mental and spiritual release too. Realizing that there's just certain things that have been really polluted within my own being and calcified to the point where nowadays during these fasts, this fast, I'm opening up to myself on a deeper level in terms of things that I want, and really allowing myself to something that Dr. Aris told me a long time ago, God thyself. So G-O-D, but also G-A-U-R-D, thyself. And I think it's so essential in terms of how we conduct ourselves on this planet and how we're relating to others, that we make sure that, yes, we are this you and I verse, we are one, we are connected. And then at the same time, one's ego can be so counter to that. And what happens is the ego will start to try to take advantage of others, especially in their good doing. And so for me on a deeper level, it's just understanding that, and not in a paranoid sense, but in the sense of like, you know, especially at this time, I've been called to just release everything and then see what comes back to me. I've been called to just let go and let be, like God, and really just weigh out on my scales what truly matters. I know what truly matters to me in terms of my purpose and what I want to do on this planet, what I am doing on this planet. You know, it definitely involves education, and not self-enlightenment, but really communal enlightenment on how we can all elevate to the next level. I don't like to consider myself enlightened, but I like to consider myself on the journey to enlightenment. There's always something to be enlightened on. There's always something new that we can be learning, something new that somebody has to share and has to offer. And going back to the more so the spiritual and the mental health of it, I'll start with the mental, where there's a lot of things that are in our egoic mind that really do need to be and deserve to be released. And so I am continuously looking at ways that I can do that, and in terms of the type of conversations and company that I may entertain, and even when it comes from loved ones who I know are going to be a part of my life for life, for the rest of their life, for the rest of mine. It's balancing that and making sure that I'm not being aggressive in the way that I may disagree, because there's many times where I know I'm not going to have the same viewpoint as somebody, and then it's really important to me now, as opposed to going to war, how can we continuously practice peace? And those who are not practicing peace is just, it's not for me. And not on a large scale level, but more so on a personal level. Because on a personal level, we do have to make sure that we keep ego in check. And a part of keeping the ego in check is making sure that we're not trying to ego clash. And the ego clash can really put us in positions where we're extending so much energy onto things that are really mundane. It's really one-dimensional. A lot of people like to talk about the 3D, but when one is just solely focused on, you know, if we want to call it the first surface in terms of if we take it on an argument perspective, right? If someone's disagreeing, and the 1D to me is like where, okay, only your ego matters, only your point matters. And that's the difference between being, I guess, in a sense, you're being objective versus subjective. And then there's the omnipresence. And in that omnipresence, I feel like we begin to really raise to that fourth dimension, to that, even to that third dimension. And a lot of people consciously, right? If we think about it, yeah, we live in a 3-dimensional world. Like if you think about, you know, the first plane, the second plane, the third plane, just like, you know, a cube, yes, physically, like we can see the 3 dimensions. But in one's mind, I think that many people have been trained to look so subjectively on things. And especially if this is information that is like, you know, the fact checkers fact checked, or the government told them, and or something that even from a spiritual community perspective, this is the thought of the spiritual community, and it's just so limiting. And we don't really get to an understanding of each other on a deep level. And then on a spiritual level, when we're thinking about just raising our vibration from the feeling of ego to the feeling of the planet to the feeling of the universe, like what is our universal purpose? What are our universal goals that we have in line for us? And we can be so distracted by the ego of self, the ego of others, and what they see for us and say for us and want for us, that we don't listen to that voice within. And something that I recently said, it's really not about being your worst enemy. It's about being your best friend. That objective, or I should say that omnipresent force, and at times objective, that will look at certain things and say, look, let me have this inner dialogue with myself. Something that I saw recently, I went to see Hamlet, Shakespeare in the Park, and it was beautiful. You know what was so cool about Hamlet? Other people may not have understood what he was saying when he was trying to break certain concepts and principles down. But what he did is he took that time to really go within. So that's why he has all of these beautiful monologues where he's really going in and he's contemplating. You know, he's allowing that force within to really give him the insight that he needs. It's not like it just happens. It takes prayer, it takes meditation. My god brother Seven recently told me prayer is almost like when you're putting it out there for others, and then meditation is when you are really looking to receive, when you are more of the one who's being gifted. And a lot of times we're gifting ourselves, you know, we're gifting ourselves that moment to just be still and breathe, right? So this has been a very interesting journey for me, because it, like everything that I talk about are usually things that I'm going through firsthand. And I think sharing my testimony is going to be a very powerful thing in terms of just my general teaching, because it's like most of the things that we should be teaching are things that we should be experiencing, right? Not just things that we saw on YouTube, but certain things that we've actually experienced. And the last thing I want to talk about now, you know, going back down to the idea of ego versus this omnipresent force. And I would love some perspective in the comments. It's this idea that we are one, right? And that, you know, everything is truly coming from source, and that our thoughts are not our own, versus the idea that we are all also creators. So, You know, it took Albert Einstein to say, let me put energy into an equation, E equals mc squared. It took Mozart to write, you know, those songs that Mozart wrote. It took Stevie Wonder and Duke Ellington and Bob Marley to make the music that they made. Basquiat, the art that he's created, nobody can take away that staple from him. People who write dissertations and essays, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, all of Malcolm X's speeches, right? And recently I had an issue with somebody who was regurgitating something that I recently shared that was not mine, but I shared a video of a brother speaking on something. And this person, word for word, copied and pasted the speech, and it was beyond 5 sentences and didn't give credit. And I took I didn't necessarily enjoy that. And I took issue to that. And I did say something about it. And it started a back and forth that I really didn't want to engage in, because it's like, look, if you don't take the lesson, you don't take the lesson. But something that he said that I think a lot of people are really getting on right now is this idea that, you know, all information is from source, and that we are really like none of it is ours. And I get that. And then I also say, you know, it took the man who created the stoplight, took the men and women who fought for voting rights, took the person who created the cell phone we're speaking on, and more people, of course. There were a lot of people, and the earth was involved in all of these things. For these things to happen, though, right? It took individuals. And that's why God gives us each individual an individual purpose. And so I guess I took a disliking to that, because it's like when somebody is so out of tune with themselves to the point that they are now passing off somebody else's thing as their own, I think that's a big sign of spiritual dis-ease. And that's the way I see it. But I'm definitely curious to what y'all think. But anyway, overall, I just want to reiterate why fasting is so important for me, because it not only reminds me to be disciplined about food going in my body, but even these conversations and entertaining certain energies, and especially while I'm doing this Kemetic Yoga course, which is 100+ days of straight up Kemetic Yoga, it's really sharpening me in a way where I understand that there's a lot of power to this individual discipline that I'm practicing. And that's also not to be taken for granted. And so I just challenge, and I want to encourage and inspire everyone to really just think about different ways that they can be detoxing. Think about even limiting cell phone and technological uses and being out in nature. You know, something that's really great right now is that I'm looking at the camera, but I'm also looking at these beautiful trees. But with that being said, I'm gonna tune out of this and tune into more of this. Bless up, God family. Stay rooted.